Hi, and welcome to Mr. Garofalo's podcast. In today's edition, we'll be looking at how to make a residual plot using your calculator. Before we do that, I'd like to recap the end of our lesson today, or where we got cut off. In today's lesson, at the end, we were sketching some residual plots based on scatter plots. And as you can see here, the scatter plot on the left gave us a residual plot that was scattered and random. We had positive and negative residuals almost alternating one another with varying distances from the prediction line. However, when we sketched a residual plot of this graph, or this scatter plot over here, we found that the shape of the residual plot came out to be curved, or in this case, a U shape or bowl shape. And we went back to discover that if we examine the plots in the scatter plot more carefully, we could see that there actually is a curvature to them. And this is important because we obviously didn't notice this using our eyes when we look at the scatter plot, but it becomes much more evident on the residual plot. And that's really the purpose of using the residual plot. It can magnify those errors so that we can see if there is a pattern to the residuals. So if we get these scattered random residual plot, we know a line is good to use to model the data. However, if we get a residual plot like this one, a line is not good for the data. Now, later on in the year, we'll learn about some other ways to model data such as this. They're called exponential functions and quadratic functions. On the next page, we're going to create a residual plot from a set of data using your graphing calculator. There's a screenshot on the page of what your calculator should look like, your stat plot should look like when you're done. So I'm going to teach you how to get this resid in here. I'm also going to go back through how to get the least squares line in your scatter plot and the steps you'll need to do. Please keep in mind the calculator will only graph a residual plot when you've put your least squares line in your scatter plot. It doesn't know the residuals unless you've done that. So you can't just automatically go to this step right here. So let's go to our calculator. Here's the data for the example from the classwork, shoe length and height, which is an example that we've looked at a couple of times already. My data is already in the list. If you haven't entered your data in the list, you're going to want to do that now. You can pause the video here and enter the shoe length in L1 and the height in L2. So go ahead and do that if you haven't done so already. Okay, so with that data entered, the first thing we're going to want to do is get a least squares line and place that line into the scatter plot. So we're going to go to Stat, move over to Calc, select number 4, linear regression. I actually have this up here from earlier, but if you look down at the screen here, okay, this is what you should have, even though your screen might be blank. We want to put the least squares line into the scatter plot, so we're going to hit vars, move over to yvars, choose number 1 function, and choose y1, hit enter. Now it should say linear regression ax plus b y1, hit enter, and we have the slope and y-intercept for the data that we've put in. Now we're going to take a look at the graph of this scatter plot as well as the graph of the residual plot. We'll hit second and y equals. And go into plot number 1. If plot 1 is off, turn it on. Choose scatter plot, x list, shoe length, L1, y list would be height, L2. Now I'm going to do something that you probably don't need to do right now. I was creating multiple plots at the same time, so I might have plot 2 or 3 on. I'm going to check that right now by moving up to the top and then moving over to what says plot 2. And you can see I was doing a residual plot earlier, so this is already on. I'm going to actually want to turn this off. I want to do one at a time. So I want a scatter plot by itself. I turn all the other plots off. When I want the residual plot, I'm going to turn the scatter plot off. So I'm going to go back to plot 1 now and hit zoom and 9. Okay, so here's the least squares line. You can see the data points plotted. Now, it doesn't appear as if there's any curvature to the data points. It looks like a line would be a good fit. We have some pretty equal number of positive and negative residuals. We have points that are very close to the line. So we think this would be good to use a line to model the data. Now, to be sure, we want to check the residual plot like we did at the end of class. So now I'm going to go make a residual plot. So we hit second and y equals. Now go into plot 1 and turn it off. So highlight off. Now go up to the top. We're going to make our residual plot in plot 2. Go up to the top, move over to plot 2, hit enter, and now plot 2 is selected, and we're going to turn that on. You're again going to choose a scatter plot because a residual plot is a scatter plot. You're going to choose list 1. Shoe length would be the x variable, but we want to plot shoe length with its corresponding residuals, not with the height. We need to find the menu that's going to give us the residuals. To do that, you're going to hit second and stat, not just stat, but you're going to hit second and stat. And the 7th one in the list should say resid. Choose number 7, and it should put that in as the Y list. And now when you hit zoom 9, that should be your residual plot. Okay, so let's analyze this to see if a line is a good fit for the data. Okay, we want to look for relatively scrambled, jumbled residual plot. And as we examine this one here, we see we're bouncing around from positive and negative residuals. There doesn't seem to be any curve to the data. It's sort of bouncing up and down. It's pretty random and scattered. The only thing that might be difficult for you guys to see here, so you can put this on your paper, is underneath it, you're going to make a sketch of this. I'm going to draw a sketch of this. If you look at these units here, this is positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. This is negative 1 and negative 2. How would I know that? Well, I'm going to hit window. And if you look, when you hit zoom 9, the calculator automatically makes what it believes is the best viewing window for the particular graph. So for the statistical graph. So in this example, the smallest shoe size was shoe length was 8.9. So we could see that we have an x min of 8.6. The largest shoe length was 11.8. So you could see the calculator automatically made that scale for us. Now for the residuals, you could see I have negative 2.6 for the negative residual, the largest negative, and 3.22 for the highest positive. So when I go to my graph, I have an idea about where those are falling. So I'm going to go back to zoom 9 or graph. So now I can start plotting these or sketching them. So you see this one here is just a touch before 9, and it's just a small positive residual. So when I go to sketch this, it's going to be somewhere about here. And I'm going to continue to work back and forth. My next one looks like a negative residual, and if I follow across, it looks like it's at about negative 2, or maybe slightly above negative 2. So I would go down to negative 2, and that would be my next plot. And now I followed up. Oh, now I have a positive residual. It looks like almost 2.5. So somewhere in here. And I continue plotting all of these until I have a sketch of the scatter plot. You don't need to be exact, obviously. You're estimating these locations. But the point here is that we now know that a line is a good fit. We can see by the scattered nature of the residual plot. So hopefully this was helpful. If you need help, again, I replay the video, go through the steps that I showed you. The key here, or the important thing here, is to remember that when you go into your stat plot, that you don't have both of them on at the same time. If you look right now, I have this residual plot on, but I have my scatter plot off. In fact, maybe I'll show you what happens when you put both of them on. So let me put both of them on. You can see what not to do. So now I have both of them on, and I hit zoom 9. You can see what happens. Here's my residual plot down here. Here's my scatter plot, and I get a terrible view of both of them. because the calculator is trying to show me both of those in the same window. So there's the reason we only put one on at a time. So again, if I turn plot 1 off, zoom 9, and I'm back to the good window for the residual plot. If there's anything that you're unsure about, feel free to send me an email. Hopefully this helps you out tonight in your homework. See you tomorrow.